Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Dani Whitlock and I am a project officer at Fidra, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the final webinar of this year. In the roundup of this year's Great Global Nurdle Hunt, we are finally sharing a webinar on Nurdle Data. We want to highlight and showcase the evidence of nurdle pollution that can be used to raise awareness and call for change. This webinar will hopefully be much shorter than our other webinars. I'll quickly navigate you through the hub resources we have before then discussing types of data and then moving on to the quantitative citizen science data we have and how you can also easily use it without much training. So when you think about Nurdle Data, you probably think of this page on our main website with all the placements of the different Nurdle hunts that you've helped us record all over the world. And this citizen science data has genuinely been collected by over 20,000 volunteers and nearly 400 organisations. So all the photos, the testimonies alongside the Nurdle hunts have created this incredible database of evidence of the widespread pollution of plastic pellets. But before I give you a quick introduction to that data and the mapping data, I thought it was really important to actually look at all the other data that you have helped us to collect over the years and how best to use that data. So I think the best place to begin is our hub. You can access this at hub.nurdlehunt.org. And on this hub, we have an array of information, particularly on our evidence and innovation solution page. Our main resources for this section are split into 4 key areas. The first is the Oracle Environmental Experts Mapping Report, where we work closely with that consultancy to map the sort of supply chain. It's like a supply chain mapping report on pellet pollution. So within that, we made place marks to understand shipping routes, as well as ports, as well as where industry was prominent alongside the Nurdle data. The report holds a ton of incredible data, and if any of the data is missing in your area, we do recognise there are limitations. There was a time limit on the report, and we would love you to perhaps build on this data with any missing data that you are aware of. We'd advise looking at the case studies within the report first. These can be found also within our general resource pack. You can create your own local case studies using the data sources from the report or other data missing that you're aware of. We would simply just ask that you can credit Fidra, Oracle Environment Experts, or any other sources that you've used. It's really important that we keep building on this data. I know it was a highly sort of requested report to help us really understand the scale of the supply chain. So it's incredible that we have this now at our fingertips. So alongside that report, there are also links to papers that can either be accessed because they're open access, or you can contact the authors via ResearchGate, and they are found within that subsection 2. Also, a colleague of mine recently shared that JSTOR, which is an online journal catalogue, lets personal accounts sign up and access 100 free peer-reviewed journal papers every single month. So that could be like a solid, viable option for some individuals, because I'm aware that some papers can be quite difficult to access. You can visit the support section of JSTOR for more information on that, and that's JSTOR is JSTOR. So building on from the technical report and the academic evidence, communication and how to communicate plastic pellet pollution is really important. Ultimately, plastic pellets are the size of lentils, and many will see other pollution sources as far more prominent, and they'll have more of a desire or knee-jerk reaction to try and tackle that pollution more quickly. So when you want people to care about nurdle pollution and how it's affecting you and your community, the only way you can truly connect with them is through storytelling. Finding the so what, like why should they care, can really help you to effectively communicate with your chosen audience. You may not have the same messaging for a community group that you're asking to Nurdle Hunt than that of your local MP who you want to support calls for more strict legislation. And we have a link to a practitioner's guide to help you connect with different audiences that I can personally recommend because I've used it on our hubs. That's great. There are also press releases on our hub for the Great Global Nurdle Hunt report. So if you are reaching out to the press and perhaps you're not as familiar with communicating with the press, they're a great starting point, alongside, of course, the global data that's summarised to show the real scale of that pollution. I think this next slide leads nicely on from the social media masterclass. It's just quickly identifying some of the different types of media that you have available at your fingertips. And I think it's really interesting when I think of all the times that me and my colleagues have been asked by the press for information. It's never the Nurdle map. Yes, that's what draws the press in, but I think what truly impacts the press and what they ask for is images. It is true that an image can speak 1,000 words. We've all seen the press photos from the Sri Lanka spill back in 2021, and I'm not sure if there's anything more powerful than a video or a photo of nodal pollution. Even in North Berwick over the last couple of weeks, the sheer volume of plastic pellets washing from the shores, littering the strand lines, it's quite striking. I find it personally quite alarming, and I think that would be far more impactful to go along to an event calling for change with images than necessarily just my Nurdle map in a hand. And so good quality images and videos are really important when communicating with the decision makers, whether that's industry, the press, or MPs. And what you're seeing right now is a slideshow that was created by members of the Break Free from Plastic Pellet Task Force, which is quite a mouthful. And this particular slideshow was created for the European Parliament during an event last year. There are 13 different countries here showing varying scales of nurdles polluting the environment across Europe. And during this event, this slideshow was on a carousel highlighting the scale of this pollution across Europe. So here is an image of pollution on a beach in Cyprus. You have here a Bulgaria image of collected nurdles. Denmark. Here I think it's Spain. And then perhaps one of the most iconic images from the event would be this image here, which is Tarragona in Spain. And then this really horrifying image of Sweden. So it really shows the different locations and the different volumes and scales of this pollution across Europe. So we also have a media library on our hub, and this offers images like the ones you just saw on that slideshow, showing the scale of pellet pollution, but also videos and assets like these ones on this slide. There is a wide variety of assets from our solutions portfolio, as well as the Great Global Nurdle Hunt campaign, but also our supply chain mapping report with Oracle. There's presentations and assets that can be found within that report. Many assets have been designed with accessibility in mind and space for organisations to add their own logos and messaging. So we don't want you to feel like you can't amend these slightly for your audiences. We'd strongly encourage it. If you don't speak English as your first language, we'd welcome you changing it or telling the story in your own languages. And we are regularly adding new images, assets, and all these webinars regularly, so do check back. Also, if you have photographs or videos you'd happily share on our hub, please let us know, because this really helps us with press requests. I think another thing that we try to really share in our Great Global Nurdle Hunt is personal testimonies too. Here is an example of the Pearl Protectors. They're this incredible NGO from Sri Lanka, and this is Muditha's personal testimony on the effects of the Pearl Express pellet disaster. And during our Great Global Nurdle Hunt last year, we did a whole page all about the Sri Lanka spill, and we included lots of incredibly personal, impactful messages, as well as mapping nurdle hunts, which can be used in reports like the one by Oracle or our Great Global Nurdle Hunt report and presentations. You can map the location of industry, shipping routes, and even major pellet spills. Like this map on the top right, used to highlight spills all along a major shipping route between China and Saudi Arabia. Dubai, Mumbai, Sri Lanka and Hong Kong all lie along this shipping route. And this map not only identifies those 4 spills along this shipping route, but it also highlights the potential disproportionate effects pellet spills along this major shipping route could have upon countries which rely heavily on tourism for GDP. So when you think about how to show the scale or show the risk to your country, sometimes there's other ways of doing it, not just with Nurdle Hunt data, that can be just as alarming, or you can embed Nurdle Hunt data into your messaging. So another example here is of using the Nurdle data where you map that on a map, but you also map major ports and the plastics industry. And we have these maps available from our mapping of the pellet supply chain report. Within this presentation slides, you can use and access them. So you could go further than this, you could do more detailed close-up versions of these, where you look at how close nurdle spills are to the plastic industry or the ports in your area, or where there's been a spill. You could even map it against oceanography. The world is your oyster. Before we go on to the mapping, you can access lots of resources on Nurdle Hub. There's a specific page on data, or types of data, which is within our evidence sort of section of solutions, and then also the media library, which includes the assets here. And I'll just leave the slide on for a moment, just in case any of you want to write those down or link through to them. So moving on, the most conventional type of data we have is our citizen science Nurdle Hunt data. And I think I just want to thank you all again, because we wouldn't be in the position we are now with over 7,000 hunts without you all participating. So I think the first question is, who can access the data? And we want all NGOs and researchers to use this data to support their research and messaging on pellet pollution. However, if you're neither, please email us in the first instance at info@fidra.org.uk so we can learn more about how and why you'd like to use the data. If you are an NGO or a researcher, you just simply need to submit the data sharing agreement. This helps us to keep track of who is using the data and how. It also helps us to provide support to users and connect NGOs and researchers who are working on similar projects. These requests go via a senior member of staff and are logged, so they can take anything up to a week for one of the team to get back to you. The data is currently provided in a CSV file, so that means it's comma separated. These are saved yearly, so the 2023 dataset won't be available until mid-January because we need to clean the data. We currently don't split the data sets by anything other than year, and for data protection purposes, sorry, the only information that you'll have available when you get sent this data is the date of the Nurdle Hunt, longitude and latitude, volunteer numbers, length of time a Nurdle Hunt took, and the number of nurdles category, which is split into 5 categories via our map. This year onwards, we've started adding country to the maps. We started adding country to the data sets because it was highly requested. If you are requesting more specific data, perhaps for your region, and we have the capacity for this, we wouldn't be able to turn this information around any quicker than 14 days because we are an incredibly small team. However, you can definitely filter the data to your needs in Excel or via a mapping tool easily. So we'd always recommend you do that in the first instance, especially if you want to have the data quicker. Once you receive the data, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but creating graphs like these is quick and simple. On the left, you have the Great Global Nurdle Hunt data from 2023, just split out into 5 categories I mentioned earlier. And on the right, we were recently asked to provide data on nurdle hunts in Scotland over a 10-year period, and that's just another way of displaying that data. And if you want to make maps and perhaps don't have the funds or resources to hire experts, it is possible to make inexpensive maps like these. The one on the left being all the data points over the last 10 years of nurdle hunting, and then the one on the right is a zoomed in map just for Scotland with more zoomed in sections surrounding the main map. So once you have your nurdle data in the CSV file, you need to download QGIS for your computer, and the website's really helpful. It'll tell you what file you need to download depending on the type of computer you have. There is also a QGIS forum, and also via YouTube you can type in QGIS for beginners, and tons of excellent videos come up. So there are other paid versions of GIS, and if you've used those in the past, they're very similar, but as this one is free, it will vary slightly. You might have information on other GIS tools, but this is the main one that we're aware of, so we're just going to share with you information on this. So I'm going to give you all a quick demonstration on using QGIS. I need to emphasize I'm not an expert. I'm a user of QGIS, and I do also have my limits. So you'll have got your software hopefully at this point, and you have your data, but you also need a shapefile. There is a great website I've linked across here as well, which includes most marine regions. If you are wanting more detailed shapefiles or specific examples, like if you're in the UK and you want a council boundary, or if you want to see Scottish only maps, then you may have to check your local government website. But via marine regions, you will find our world map. It's just whether or not it's detailed enough for you, and then there are maps within that too, so it is really helpful. It tells you exactly what they are and the georeferencing that they are within. So it's important to note as well that your own country may have their own interactive maps or data sources that are open for you to use as long as you reference them correctly. So don't feel like the only place you can go to get a map would be the marine regions website. I personally recommend it because it's great, but there are other places that you can go to as well. So I'll just highlight to you all that the next webinars coming up in 2024 will be back to our Solutions to Pellet Pollution series. I'm going to end this presentation now and just go across to sharing my screen to talk you through how to use QGIS. So I quickly want to show everyone perhaps some open data sources that you can get different information from. So this one is the Ordnance Survey website, and it has open data on this, and it tells you what the coverage is. So this is all of Great Britain. The data structure, if it's a raster, for example, or a vector, which is this one down here. And it also tells you the version of it and how it gets supplied to you. So this one's in a TIFF file. Shape files are typically what you use in ArcGIS, but you can also use TIFF files. This particular site is clearly showing us data for UK, but after quickly searching online for open portals, this one's powered by Esri, and here you get information on Africa topographic moisture potential. But if you wanted to know something specific about an area, For example, here you've got the South Africa 50 centimetre colour imagery. That is also available here, and it tells you exactly what type of data that is, and it's like an image layer. So it's really, really helpful. There's also an open data portal that I found, dataportal.asia here, and this has the list of countries and the types of data that you can get from those areas, which is great. I wasn't able to find an open portal for South America, but I did find a portal for the South America region, and this here is the ArcGIS, which is the paid version, a paid version of GIS. And here you can also find information. There's an OpenStreetMap here, which is brilliant, but it might be that you have to ask different NGOs in your area for that type of support, because unfortunately we aren't aware of all the different the open data sets you can get. But I'll leave links to these ones on our hub as well for you. I'd thoroughly recommend trying any of them if you want to make more complex maps. But today I'm just going to quickly show you how to make a QGIS map using our Nurdle data. I'm just loading up QGIS now, and so I'm just going to start a brand new project rather than the previous ones. And perhaps the most useful thing to do is to go through this user face of QGIS. So here, the top bar is a menu bar. Then you have like your new folder, save options. Here is like a new print layout option. These sort of tools here along this section are options to zoom in and out of the map, or to move the map and pan around. You can also bookmark spatial data too, which is great. And then these information sections are really helpful because they open up attribute tables. So in our instance, we've got the Nurdle data, and we'd want the attribute table to open up so we could see the actual data itself, in case there's any data that we're questioning or we're not certain. If it's a true data set piece, maybe it seems it's in like a peculiar location, like not by the sea. There might have been an inland spill, but you don't know perhaps until you highlight the data point itself separately and have a look. And then this large area here is the main map area, which is nice and easy. This is where all your visual data will display. We also have over here, here is the navigation labels to help you navigate. And then there's also sections where you can then amend your maps further and cut them. And this section here is like the registration sort of area where you plan in like a new geo layer, perhaps for a map that you want to print out shortly, or you're measuring or trying to add shape files. So it's really useful section. Here is your general browser information, so you can go and get information going through your own home or your desktop here, or if you have, SQL Server data, you can also go here too. This here is your layers list. Hopefully you can see the word layer there. And this is where every single data file that you add appears. And this toolbar down here, it probably has a fancy name, but it's where you can put things like, you can ask how to create a layer from point data, and then you'd go in and it would pop up with a new window explaining how you do that. Or if you want to do anything specific with one of your polygons, for example, you turn polygons to lines, you'd go in here and it start writing the word polygon. So it's really useful. I thoroughly recommend it. And then if at any point you get a bit confused, you just want to know the coordinates of where your mouse is, that information's down here. It shows you the magnifier, and you can also render your image too. And this here tells you what coordinate system you're in. I'm automatically in EPSG, which is like the World Geodata. I don't know what the acronym stands for, but it's just basically saying worldwide data. And that's what I use. It might be slightly different for your regions, but for our Nurdle data, it should be this data. So I hope that is kind of self-explanatory. But if it's not, please use YouTube. It's an absolute lifesaver. So to begin with, you need to add layers. And the first layer that we want to add is our CSV file, which has got all the Nurdle points in it. And that is a delimited text layer. So I click on this and a brand new window pops up and it asks me for the file name. So I go in and I've got a webinar example folder I've created on my desktop for this, and I've got some example data so that you have access to that and you can understand what the data looks like. So I'm going to assume that maybe it doesn't, that it will automatically assume, sorry, I will assume that it will be automatically known that this is a CSV file. But if you have a different type of file, you have custom delimiters and not just commas, you can click this button and it will give you options for what you're using, but we're just using commas, so it's nice and easy. The software has already picked up that the first record has field names in it, so it's now picked up that latitude, longitude, when, no volunteers, how long they've hunted are all not the data. And so it's detected the field types and it's assumed that this is decimals, this is a string text, even though it is date. But that doesn't really matter because I'm not going into that too much, but it gives you the field types there, which is really helpful. And if it doesn't, but it should recognize that you have your X field as longitude and your Y field as latitude, you can physically go in and click the correct one. The software has also identified the geometry for this data set automatically. If it doesn't, you can search here and find that yourself. So yeah, World Geodetic System, sorry, is what WGS stands for. So there we go. So once we're happy with all that data and we think it looks okay, just think, you can then go add and close this here. So now we've added all our data and you can right click on your example data. You can open attributes table and you can see all the data. Your data will include country like this because we've added it for you. But this is all the information it will include and then it's automatically mapped it. If you want to perhaps do anything else with the data, there's a whole section here that shows you can change the layer name. So I could just change this to say Nurdle Data and apply that. I could also go into symbology and change the symbols of this, but we'll perhaps go in there later and do that. And there's loads of other options that you can do. You can join it to a layer if you have any other layers on here. We don't yet. You can also get a legend and specify that. So it's a really helpful little place to go. So now we've got this, we now need a shapefile. And the shapefile we need will be by adding another layer. In this instance, we're adding a vector layer, because that's what we've downloaded from Marine Region's website. It's found here. So I've got an exact country boundaries file. Other than that, it has the exact country boundaries saved as a database file, as a project file, but what we want to use it is the shapefile. So typically when you download any of this type of shape data, when you download it offline, there will be a shapefile, and that's what I'd recommend if you're making a simple data set. You don't need to worry about anything. I know I don't need to worry about any of the default options changing here, but there is a help page if you do need to understand these options for the data you've downloaded. If you've downloaded it from the Marine Region's website, you perhaps don't have to worry as much, but I don't know where you're downloading your data or what you're trying to map at this point. So I've got to assume that you're trying to map Nurdle data like me for the world. So behind this box, I'll just close it, a map's appeared. And if you zoom in straight away, some of the Nurdle points have also disappeared. And they've not disappeared, they're just behind this layer. So what I do then is drag that layer to the bottom, and now they've all appeared back on top. So this is just some example data. It's not all the data that we have, but it is really interesting. So at this point, you could perhaps focus in on a certain area. You want to know specifically about the UK in this example, or Scotland. You might want to just zoom into a certain area. And yes, Nurdle hunts have happened here, but actually what else might you want to know? And this is when I go and double click back on Nurdle Data and I go to symbology. And you can change the symbol to be categorized, graduated, rule-based, if you only want certain symbols to turn up. If you don't want to map anywhere that a Nurdle hunt took place but no Nurdles are found, you could do this off a rule base. You can make a heat map or point cluster if you know that there's a larger proportion of hunts that have happened in a certain area. You can perhaps highlight that, but here, just to make it nice and simple, I'm going to do a categorized data set, or categorized. I'm going to visualize the data by a category, and the category I'm choosing is the final Nurdle count category. So once I've clicked that, I can click classify, and it'll come up with all the categories that we have saved. So the 0 Nurdles is here, so it's just jumped down. I want to go to the top, probably not going to pay attention. You can move these around to the correct order you want them in. If it plays ball, it can be a bit temperamental. Very temperamental. You just simply drag these and they should go in the right order. Might be a quicker way of doing this, but I don't know it, so I'm not going to pretend I do. And at this point, you could just click apply, and I could move this out of the way, and you can see that you've got a really nice colourful map with some areas that have got larger numbers of Nurdles found than others. There's also a peculiar Nurdle hunt that's been done here. This is clearly an anomaly, and so maybe you'd go in and clean the data after that, but we'll ignore that for now. Within the symbols, each symbol, you can potentially turn it and change it into a green dot, for example, for that one. You could just go in and change the color. Maybe you want this color to be, in this instance, orange. Maybe you think that actually the sites that have greater than 1,000 Nurdles found, maybe you want it to have a bigger marker, and you can apply all these however you want. Maybe you then decide that actually you want the category 0 here to be more muted or larger, and you can change the size of the point here in millimeters, and you can make that really small or make that really big, whatever suits you best. So I'll make mine really small just so that we've got some variation, hopefully, and apply that. And then after you've applied it, you can click OK. And so now you've got this map, which you could export, and you could simply go into project and you could export it the way it is, which works as either an image or a PDF. But what you might actually want to do once you've got this data is to go into a new print layout. You can give it a name, so I'll give mine the name webinar, because we're in the webinar right now, and it creates this blank screen. And do not panic, your data is sitting behind this right there, but when I first did this on QGIS, I had a little panic myself. So you've now got a sheet you can zoom into, and you can gradually add all your data to this. So you might want to start off by adding the map, and it doesn't just add it for you. You need to click where you want it. So if I want the map to be this size, I'd click it there. And maybe at this point, I'd want to put names on my site, on my map. Maybe I don't. Maybe I want to add a 3D element. I'm definitely not doing that. Maybe I want to add my logo, which I could do here. Maybe I want to say like a wee citation saying where I got the map from. So I got the data from Fidra, and this is data from 2023 as an example. So I might want to put credits here for the data or the shape files that I'm using. I might also want to put a scale bar, so people know the scale that the map is on. I might want to add a north arrow so that people know where north is. It might be a country people aren't aware of, and you might be at an international conference. So you might then also want to add another layer. So you could add another map layer if you wanted to. So you could also add on here a key, which is here. I can add that symbol there, and it'll give you all my Nurdle categories. I could choose to keep the map data here. I can change the name of that to say world map. So the options are endless on here, and it's great. You can change the styles of these as well, and go on to page properties, manage guides for the page, item properties. It's really helpful. And at the end of all this, after you've saved it, you can then export this as well. So you should be able to just go down here. You can export it now as an image, a CVG, or a PDF, or just print it straight away. So this wouldn't necessarily be my final map, but it was just to give you an indication of how to map this type of data that we have here. And then once you finish with this, you can close it if you've saved it, and then you can play with this further. If you wanted to add more maps or more layers, you could do that as well. You can maybe find data on all the major ports or shipping routes, or you could zoom in and focus on a particular area. Maybe it's your hometown and you know there's been significant Nurdle hunts in that area, and therefore you think there's a significant source of pollution. So that's everything that I have to show you today. This webinar will be available on our hub, and all the resources that I've shown you today will be signposted on there too. So our hub, just to reiterate, is hub.nurdlehunt.org. And if you have any questions, ideally not too technical, you can come to us at info@fidra.org.uk. I would advise, though, if you have any technical questions, to use the incredible forums online because they are super helpful. So thank you very much for watching, and see you in the next one.